everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our fireside chat. I'm Lori Cutts, and I'm the head of agency partnerships at Everflow. We have a really exciting topic here today that our friends from Conscience Partners are going to present to you. They're going to speak to how brands can retain more affiliates and improve profitability through conversion rate optimization. So they're going to cover why CRO is so important, especially in affiliate marketing, as well as some of the strategies and tactics so you can improve customer acquisition and retain affiliates. So to kick things off, I'd like to welcome our speakers, Tammy Pham, Hafiz Doza, and Paul Jay. Tammy, it would be great if you could just start by quickly introducing yourself and talk a little bit about what Conscious Partners does.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today. We're super excited about it. At Conscious Partners, we are a marketing agency, and we love working with brands and products that improve people's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial well-being. And our secret sauce and our magic is being able to take a 8-figure brand and unlocking the next stage of growth for them. So that looks like taking them to 9 figures and beyond. And so why we're really excited to share with you today is conversion rate optimization and how you can actually use that to unlock growth in your brand and company there. And specifically, we're going to show you things that we've tested on over $500 million in traffic. And we're actually going to give you 3 immediate things that you can do right away. So stay to the end and we'll share them. So CRO is actually a super powerful thing that you can implement, but it's often overlooked because of the misconceptions. So a few things that we hear is CRO is all about changing the call to action button colors and placement. Another thing we hear is CRO is about testing something once and never having to look at it again. Another assumption or misconception we hear is CRO is all about optimizing for any conversion at all. It doesn't matter what it is, just optimize and get any conversion. Another example that we hear is CRO is actually not required because as long as you can scale by ramping up traffic, you're good to go. And lastly, another big misconception about CRO is that as long as you run a lot of tests, you'll find winners and the rest doesn't matter. It's just a volumes game. These are not what CRO is. And we're going to dive into examples of why they're not. And I'll pass it off to Paul to add some color there.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cool. So starting with like CRO being not really focused on just button colors. Oftentimes like CRO is confused with like cosmetic changes, like changing button colors as if that's going to really improve performance. That actually has very little impact on performance. And then when it comes to testing and forgetting about testing, oftentimes what you see brands doing is they'll do one major change like to the hero section of a website and then not visit it again for another year. CRO is really about compounding tests on top of each other. It's not a one-time thing, it's a continuous effort, and it's stacking your wins as you go. And then we also hear like, optimizing for any conversion is something that brands want to do, but optimizing for just purely conversion rate often isn't a good thing to optimize for, because to give you an example, like let's say you have a very high conversion rate on a lead form submit, but if the quality of the leads on the back end is, it doesn't matter that you have a high conversion rate. In fact, you'd actually probably be off having a lower conversion rate and getting higher quality leads. And then the next one up is ramping up traffic is going to equal more conversions. Anybody that's scaled hard knows that as soon as you start ramping up traffic, conversion costs start to fall apart. And so to actually scale really hard, you do need actually an improved conversion rate to keep up with the increasing CAC that's going to happen as you scale. And then the last thing is about people get really obsessed about running lots and lots of tests. The test should be proportionate to the amount of traffic that you have. And also the test should be reflective of the impact that they'll actually have and if they'll move the needle. It shouldn't just be running tests for the sake of running tests. I'm just going to pass it over to Hafiz for the next slide here.
Yeah, so if people thought about conversion rate optimization as profitability optimization, I think there'd be a lot more interest behind it. So I'm glad everyone's here to learn more details about all this. And one of the things that we find people miss is that CRO is not just about something that's about a few percentage points here or there, or even double digits. And I'm going to show you how it's actually much bigger than that. So here's a sample brand. They sell some widgets online. They do a 3-to-1 return on ad spend. So for every $1,000 in revenue, a third goes to media. Let's say a third goes to their cost of goods sold and a third to their gross profits. And then half of the gross profits end up going to their fixed costs. And so the profits are going to be 1/6 of the revenue that you see here on the screen. Now with CRO, unless you've really focused on that a lot in the past and spent time to optimize, in our experience, what we find is that we've never seen anyone that couldn't optimize conversion rates by even 50% when done right, based on what we're going to cover later on. And in some cases, even doubling conversion rates is very feasible. Next. So what that means, 50% up here means that the revenue goes up. The cost of goods sold also goes up because you're selling more units, but the media cost doesn't change. Next. So the end result is that gross profits are up 100% and the net income has actually tripled. Next. So overall now your ROAS is up as well too. All your margin metrics are up. And then since enterprise value is actually based off some multiple of revenue or profits, your business can actually be worth, in this scenario here, up to 3 times as much now. And we find out this is where people usually stop. But the next step is actually, as long as you were making money before, that you reinvest your improved margins back into your growth. So scaling up ad spend, like Paul alluded to, when you do that, your CPM costs go up and your ROAS goes back down again. And so in this case, it can actually be more beneficial to continue reinvesting in that scaled up media, or if you're running with affiliates, then increasing the payouts to affiliates to get that ratio back down to, let's say, that 3-to-1 ROAS ratio. And in our experience, you can double revenues when you can scale up and purposely lower your ROAS metrics back down. So next. And so now doubling that revenue, we're actually at triple the original revenue and back at the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 ratios there. Next. And you can see that net income is actually now up 350% from the original baselines. Your margins are actually back at the original ratios as they were before, but with that increase in net income, your enterprise value is actually up 250% as well too. And so that's what leveraging CRO to scale looks like. And now let's say you tried scaling up, but without that 50% improvement in ROAS. Next. So your media costs are still as they were before, but your revenues are 50% lower. And your profits are actually worse than they were in the original scenario. And that's the mistake so many brands make, is that they try scaling up in an unoptimized fashion and end up with the worst profits than they had when they were smaller. And then they're chasing even further growth, and they're in this cycle. And so next, overall, CRO is like having an unfair advantage lever that you have that disproportionately improves things. So 1.5 on your conversion rate unlocks a 3x in your short-term profits and a 4.5x in your long-term profits here in this example. Over to you, Paul.
Paul, you're on mute.
Yep. Sorry. So one of the things that we wanted to touch on is how CRO actually impacts things like paid traffic. So this slide that you're actually seeing is pulled from a Facebook deck that was given out by them, or officially now Meta. And one of the things that people don't consider or understand is how much conversion rate actually impacts the traffic quality and your position in the auction. So Facebook actually factors in what they call estimated conversion rate or estimated action rate. And what they do is actually measure your traffic versus your competitors' traffic. So to use an example, like let's say you sell a product to 40-year-old women, and then you have a competitor selling to the same demographic. Now, if your traffic converts, let's say 3 to 4x better than your competitor, Facebook is going to want to prioritize you in the auction, load your ads, earlier in the session, give you better traffic quality, because they know that you have a higher likelihood of actually converting that traffic. So people think that conversion rate is just kind of what they see in their dashboard, but it has a lot of downstream effects throughout the business. And one of the ways that it really shows up is how Facebook measures your ads against all the other competitors based on how much they think you can actually convert the traffic. So it's a huge lever that should be considered. Cool. So one of the major things that's happening, like for anybody that's running traffic right now, is you can see year over year traffic costs are really going up. I just want to share some really interesting stats with you guys. So in 2015, Facebook had 2 million advertisers. As of 2024, that number is now over 10 million. And in 2015, Shopify only had 165,000 merchants on the platform. Now that number is over 2 million. So what's actually happening is like there is only a fixed amount of inventory. So there's far more demand that's growing day by day than there is inventory that's available. So what you're seeing is prices going up significantly year over year, and that will impact the ability to be profitable and scale. And that's why CRO starts to become more and more important as the traffic prices start to increase. So next. So I just want to give an example of how CRO kind of impacts scaling. A lot of brands, what they find is like they can hit a certain scale, but beyond that scale, things start to kind of explode. An example of this would be like they can do $1,000 a day spend on Facebook at a $30 CAC, but the second they start pushing to like 1,500 or $2,000 or $3,000, that $30 CAC goes to like 35, 40, 45, and then all of a sudden it's unprofitable, and then they got to pull it back and get it back into that $1,000 a day range. And the reason for that is that their conversion rate doesn't support scaling. And what's important is that you need to be super profitable at the low end. So even at low spends, like $1,000 a day, you need to be incredibly profitable so that when you do hit, $5,000 and $10,000 a day in spend, you are actually able to sustain a CAC that's around 30 or below. So CRO is a huge component of how you're able to scale. All right. So I know there's some networks and brands and offer owners on the call. So one of the things that we wanted to touch on was one of the biggest challenges that network owners and offer owners have is trying to, and brands as well, is trying to retain and attract affiliates. And oftentimes, what they find is affiliates come and go. They'll come in, they'll do really well on an offer, and then they'll go quiet or go dark. And it's hard to stabilize the traffic. So they continue to try and recruit more and more affiliates. Now, what's really often it's believed that the best form of marketing is to go get more and more affiliates. But the reality of it is a lot of decisions made by affiliates happen because of what they hear in group chats. The most important thing is what are other affiliates saying about your offer or your product in the group chats that they have with other super affiliates. And that's where EPC becomes very, very important, because if you don't have the best performing EPC, then you're not going to be discussed as much as other offers are. And I firmly believe that if you have the highest EPC and you have the highest converting offer, affiliates will beat a path to your door to run traffic with you. And so that's where EPC becomes a really important thing. And that driving a really powerful EPC comes from having really good CRO practices to keep making your offer convert better and better.
And yeah, in terms of the enterprise value, most businesses are valued based on an earnings multiple. So that's your earnings measured by something like EBITDA multiplied by your EBITDA multiple. And so there are two ways to improve the valuation, and both of them are in fact impacted by CRO. One is to actually increase the actual profits, and that's what we showed you earlier in that spreadsheet model. But the other is to also increase the multiplier, and the multiplier is based off industry norms, things that are a little bit hard to control. And as well as things like growth rates. So the higher your growth rate in the business, the higher your multiple will be. And so if you can optimize your site, you're creating that higher growth rate, and you're able to, because you're able to scale, using what Paul was just talking about. And so that higher multiple has a double whammy impact on your enterprise value, because both the baseline is higher as well as the multiplier increases.
So if any of those problems resonated with you, the good news is that when you do improve your CRO, all of those problems can actually be addressed, and you'll start to see all of the positive ripple effects of CRO. And today we're going to tell you how to achieve this. So a fun fact before we dive in, Paul, do you want to share this?
Yep, I'll jump into this. So an interesting fact is that like all of your favorite companies are doing CRO experiments in the background, just most people are unaware of it. So at Facebook, at Instagram, at Netflix, LinkedIn, there's all these companies have full-on divisions that all they do is just conversion rate optimization. They're just trying to improve revenue per user. What you're actually seeing on this slide right now is split tests that Netflix themselves run. So whether you're in a certain country or you're even in your own home, if you actually log into a Netflix account, most people have different profiles, like maybe the husband has one, the wife has one, the kids have one. Each of those are going to have a different thumbnail for the same TV show or the same movie series or movie. And it's because Netflix knows that, hey, like, males, 25 to 45 respond to thumbnail 1, and women between the ages of 35 and 45 respond to thumbnail 2. So they're constantly split testing, and it's really interesting because this is the kind of stuff that they run in the background, and it's really fascinating to think about how much big companies focus on CRO. And once you understand how powerful it is, you can see why they do it and how it can also move the needle for most brands internally as well.
So just to recap, because we've gone through a lot of information here, we've gone over what are the most common misconceptions of CRO. We've gone over some of the problems that you might be facing and how CRO can potentially be used to fix that. So if you could have one takeaway from our presentation today, it's that CRO isn't always about efficiency and all of that, like those misconceptions we covered. CRO is actually about how you can scale smart and not hard. And here are some of the most common root causes we've seen for poor conversion rates. So if you want more information on this, please feel free to shoot me an email. We'll be more than happy to send you more information. But these 12 key areas are the most common things that we see that actually contribute to poor conversion rates. And actually, we're going to go over a few examples in detail on what we mean by that.
Awesome. All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. So one of the first things that we see most brands do where it messes up how they approach conversion rate optimization is that they focus on desktop conversion rate. Nowadays, most traffic is 75% plus of it is mobile. And so like you really want to approach this as a mobile first strategy. And so what we're going to dive into is some of the things that can kind of go wrong when you ignore mobile and you start optimizing for a desktop split test. So this particular company, MyProtein, like on their desktop version of the website, the product image displays correctly. But if you actually go over to mobile, the image of the product actually gets pushed way below the fold. So this is kind of problematic because even in their media buying, they might see that, wow, like desktop converts way better than mobile, but they don't understand why. And it's because this is what's actually happening on the mobile experience. So what you want to do is really optimize the mobile experience first from a CRO perspective. And I'll give you some insights on this. So like the images here are not well utilized. It's the same protein bag displayed in 3 different lighting scenarios and then the back side of the bag. This is kind of a wasted use of the images, right? The images, you could use one of the images in the slots for basically benefits. Like you could show the benefits of the product, lifestyle photos, even big testimonials that you have from your customers. And another thing you can do that we found that drives really solid improvements in conversion rate is figure out the number of units sold of a particular product and then add a badge to the first image in the carousel. So for this, let's just say they sold 50,000 bags of protein. You'd have a badge that says over 50,000 sold. And you'll see an immediate lift in conversion rate just by adding that added social proof. And then another thing you'll notice on this page is like right now, like what sticks out to you is it says it's $16. But if you look right below that in very small font, it says save and then the amount you're saving. You're taking this money out of your margins, and it's very easy in the way that it's laid out to completely miss that. So if you're going to discount a product, you really want to highlight it, make it larger, and make sure that the consumer understands that you are discounting the product and driving up perceived value. But in this case, it just looks like the product is priced at $16, and it's easy to just gloss by that, save $23 the discount amount. And so they're not doing themselves any favors when it comes to conversion rate. Like, this is probably not actually even showing up as a conversion rate lift for them, even though it's discounted. All right. So a core principle around conversion rate is that confused customers don't convert. Additionally, like, if customers can't find the information they're looking for, they'll definitely leave. So on this page, what I want to talk about here is this product. It's hard to understand what it is because the main headline just says the painkiller. So if you look closely in that image, you'll see like kind of a white, what looks like a white plastic piece. That's actually the product. And what it is it actually it hooks into your hip and helps relieve pain in your hip. But if you looked at this product page just in above the fold, you can't understand what the product is. And so now you're forcing the consumer to think and try and decipher, okay, what is a product? What does it do? And you're making them do the legwork. So a simple copy test here would be the world's first tool designed to release tension in hip muscles. And within 3 seconds, like the general principle is, and within 3 seconds, a customer should understand exactly what the product does so that they can start going through the rest of the buying journey. So this is kind of an interesting fact for any sort of supplement / consumable. On this particular product page for My Protein, if you actually hit the magnifying button, that even though it shows the supplement label, you can't read it. It's super blurry. And this is really problematic because when people are actually purchasing a supplement, they want to know what's in the ingredients, if they're allergic to something, or what's the dosage of the ingredients. And this is one of the frameworks that we think about, which is like, is there missing information? Now, for supplements, that's key information. That's part of the purchasing journey. So if they don't have the specific ingredient list to check if they're allergic to it or the dosage, people will just be like, I can't find this here. I'm going to go somewhere else where I can clearly see the label or see the ingredient list and go purchase there. So if you're in the supplement space or the consumable space, this is definitely a piece of information you want to look for. So this framework is around, like, if you don't speak in a language that your customer easily understands, they won't buy. And I'll dive into this a bit on the next slide here, which is like, if you guys see on the far left, it says revolution of neuromodulation technology. That sounds like I need to go to MIT to understand that. And one of the things you want to think about is, like, if you don't understand the customer that you're selling to, typically when you see copy like this, what it usually is a reflection of is that the product and engineering team led the marketing perspective. And you really want to think about it from the customer perspective, not necessarily the engineering perspective, because reading something like the revolution of neuromodulation technology, it kind of sounds weird to say, but it actually, it makes people feel bad about themselves. If they feel like they can't wrap their heads around what that is, or that copy is intimidating, they don't like to be made to feel like they're not smart. And that's another reason that they're going to drop out of the funnel. So the key thing is to actually understand, like, how do customers use a product? What benefits do they see? What is the simplest, like, largest aperture language that they can actually understand and appreciate? And so it's really important to speak in the language that your customer understands and has the most impact with them. And part of this is part of understanding your customer is also understanding, like, what's driving the buying behavior. So as you can see in the sub headline, they talk about sleep, stress, anxiety, but it's important to actually think, like, is sleep driving 90% of the sales, and then stress and anxiety are, like, very far behind? And if that is the case, perhaps you should focus more of your messaging towards sleep, so that it resonates more with the audience. So the important thing is, like, you know, let's just say, for example, with this product, if it helps you sleep and the ideal customer is, you know, a 60-year-old woman that is struggling with sleep and is looking for a solution, this type of copy might be very intimidating and not resonate with them. And it could be killing conversion rate. So you want to figure out a way and how to speak or create messaging in a way that resonates with them. Okay, so I am a conversion rate nerd, and I absolutely love this case study, so you guys will enjoy this. It's a quick story. So the Facebook that we know today with like multi-billion users, like we're many decades on from when they first started. But back in the 2000s, from when Facebook first got launched, when they entered the Japanese market for the first time, they were competing with a site called Mixi, which was kind of like the local version of Facebook. And the conversion rates in Japan were absolutely horrible compared to other parts of the world. So what they were doing was they were basically introducing their standard sign-up funnel. And if you guys remember back in the day, it would be like you sign up, and then the next step would be like invite your friends, and then you spam all of your friends. And then that's how Facebook kind of had its viral mechanism built into their sign-up flow. And what they realized is that, like, the conversion rates were horrible in Japan, and they were kind of scratching their heads trying to figure out what it was. So they started talking to their country managers, started talking to their customers. And then what they realized was in Japanese culture, it's considered rude to send mass invites to people to join websites. It's a very normal behavior in North America, but in Japan, it was considered rude. And so people did not want to spam their friends and say, hey, join Facebook. So what the Facebook team did is actually that step of the funnel, they took it from invite your friends to announce to your friends that you have joined Facebook. And so, you know, instead of getting an email from me saying like, hey, Paul's invited you to Facebook, it would send you an email saying, hey, I have joined Facebook, and then announcing that you have joined the platform. Signups skyrocketed. Eventually, Facebook surpassed Mixi. Like, this is a real powerful example of understanding your customer. In this particular case, is understanding culture and how the customer views a product in that particular geo. But this is like a testament to what conversion rate optimization can do, because Japan was a failing market for Facebook until they figured this out.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's really, really important to understand your customers. And you can do that by, there's two parts to that. One is actually sending out surveys, talking to your customers, and getting all those insights, as Paul mentioned in the case study and the examples we showed there. When you're doing surveys, an important thing to think about is what type of survey are you actually sending and how are you sending it? So having open-ended questions, for example, is a really good way that you're going to allow customers to actually input and use language that they would use to describe your product, and potentially have different insights that you would have never thought about how they would describe it or how they would use it or what they found transformational about it. So getting into the deep end and getting those deep insights about who your customer is and how they use your product is really, really key. So that's part one. Then once you get all that information, part two is then knowing what to do with that information. So once you get all those insights, now you can take a look at it and start integrating it into your messaging, your offer, your value proposition, your benefits and outcomes. So there's a ton of different value that you can gain from speaking to your customers. And so at Conscious Partners, as you can see, we're very passionate about customer psychology, and we know that this is very, very important to address those 12 common mistakes that we see as part of poor conversion rates. And internally, this is our customer analysis framework. So there's 4 steps that we typically do. First one is talking to the customer. So whether that's sending out a survey, actually picking up the phone, and having that one-to-one and getting the insights, that's step 1. Then step 2, we dive right into the data. We look at everything that is submitted. And then from there, that's when we start strategically planning out what types of tests that we do. So if you can recall in the beginning, one of the misconceptions about CRO is it's a volumes game. Just do as much tests as possible. You'll find a winner. It's important to, based on the insights you're getting about your customer, the psychology behind that. And then from there, you're going to be able to strategically think of, okay, what test would make the most impact, because now we're speaking to our customers. Now we know what their buy-in triggers are, how they use it, how is it transformational. So then once you strategically plan your test, the last step of the framework is actually executing it, and then again, reviewing all the data. What are you learning, and applying it forward. So as I mentioned, in our customer analysis framework, we have a very extensive customer survey analysis, customer survey that we send out. And it has a ton of questions. And as I mentioned, the type of questions that we ask are open-ended. And that gives the opportunity for customers to actually give a ton more information and not be stuck to multiple choice. So you're going to get a lot of insights just from them being able to type in and give you that feedback. And what we wanted to share with you today are 2 questions that you can include in your next survey that you want to send out. And these 2 we found super impactful. So one is, if you could wave a magic wand, what would this product do for you? And 2, was there anything that almost stopped you from purchasing? And Paul, I'd love for you to add to some of those 2 questions there, and on kind of the rationale and the CRO strategy behind asking these 2 questions.
Yeah, for sure. I think an important thing to point out is like a lot of companies utilize surveys as like a form of a feedback loop, where it's just like, did you like the product? Did you not like the product? It's like very basic surveys. Surveys are such a gold mine for finding incredible insights about your customers that can be weaved into landing pages, funnels, and copy. And so like question number 1 there is a great example of that. Like, if you could wave a magic wand, what would this product do for you? What you're really trying to pull out of the customer by asking that question is like, how do they see this product fitting into their lives? How are they trying to use it? And what is the desired outcome that they're trying to get? And then that should be like, if you see a commonality in say like 1,000 responses, all saying something very similar, you need to ask the question like, does my landing page reflect that? Does my funnel reflect that? Does my creatives reflect that? And so you can improve conversion rate by like better understanding your customer and taking those insights and feeding it back into the funnel to improve conversion rates. And number 2 goes back to the other framework we were talking about, which is like missing information, right? So was there anything that almost stopped you from purchasing? This is a really powerful question because, you know, people tend to get really into like the click maps and scroll maps. You're not going to get that insight there. Like a click map or a scroll map is not going to tell you why somebody didn't buy or almost bailed out of your funnel. But asking that question to your customer, they could tell you like, hey, you know, it was almost the price, or it was almost this, or you didn't have the ingredient information when I was trying to buy a supplement, so I almost bailed out of the funnel. All of those are insights. And then you want to kind of plug the holes where there's missing information or address those objections.
I'm just going to add something in here as well, too. You know, Tammy had mentioned doing these as open-ended questions, and that's only the near way of how we do things. Our old way would actually have been to send the survey to a small list of people and with open-ended questions, and then do the manual work of categorizing those answers and then sending the remainder of the customers a multiple choice survey. And that's because it was too much work to manually categorize thousands of open-ended questions or responses. And so now with tools like ChatGPT, and the fact that they've increased what's called the context window of how much data you can put in one message, we actually just recommend only doing open-ended raw responses and then dumping them into ChatGPT to analyze and asking it like, hey, here's all the data. Tell me the top trends you see in the responses. And that was obviously something that wasn't possible, you know, a year and a half ago. And it's changed how we analyze this data because it's easier and faster and cheaper to do it that way. And that's just one of the ways that you can harness AI in your conversion rate work streams.
So after you've gotten all the data from your customer survey and the analysis there, these are some examples of some of the tests that you can actually implement today as well. But also these are the tests that we've implemented and have shown massive success. So I'll go over them and share it with you. They're categorized into 3 different categories here. So first being the customer psychology trigger, taking out the guesswork and speaking to your customer. So we were actually able to figure out which types of experiments we want to run because we did such a deep dive into the customer. So the first example about customer psychology trigger, when you add confetti, so when somebody adds a product to cart, showing confetti pop up can have an 18% increase in revenue per session. Another example about taking out the guesswork is actually adding a how-to section. So products, so something simple like step 1, put on the product, step 2, turn on and log into the app, and step 3, start to see all your meditations, for example. So having a how-to section that actually guides the user on how they could potentially use a product showed to improve add to cart rate by 24% and a 27% increase in conversion rate as well. And lastly, just speaking to your customer and understanding them. The last example there is adding an interstitial that allows customers to actually select their use case. So for example, if this is a fitness product and there's multiple use cases for it. So it could be something like, I want to use this to lose weight. I want to use this to increase muscle. I want to use this to increase balance and flexibility. Having that ability for customers to say, this is how I want to use it. We've actually seen an increase by 33% in revenue per visit and 38% increase in transactions and 17% increase in lead capture rate. So these are just examples of when you do your customer survey and send that out, all the data that's collected, strategically planning them out, and then executing it. This is how you can make sure that you're being effective in the type of tests that you're running. So to recap, the first thing that we told you is that CRO doesn't have to be about, it's not about efficiency. It's actually about scaling smart and not hard. The second one is by understanding your customer at such a deep level and getting those insights, you're going to be able to avoid those 12 common root causes that we've seen that attribute to poor conversion rates. So those are the two takeaways. CRO allows you to scale smart and not hard. And number 2, know your customer so you can avoid the pitfalls. And next, we want to dive into a case study that actually showcases this in a way that you can continue to leverage and stack wins. So one misconception that we shared earlier is like, wins don't start and stop with one experiment. So if you can recall, and I mentioned CRO is about, testing it once, forgetting about it, all good. It's not that. And if you do actually stop after one win, it's like this gift that you're seeing here where someone's prematurely celebrating. So don't do that. And we'll go over this case study here. Paul, do you want to take it over and dive into this and I'll add to it?
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of earlier spoke about like how engineering focused kind of marketing perspective can hurt conversion rates. When we first started working on the conversion rate optimization for this brand, the copy was really focused on EEG powered devices. Now, for people who are biohackers or, technology buffs, that might be very easy to understand. But for the average consumer, it's actually quite intimidating to try and decipher what that means. So what we first started doing was actually testing different copy that would resonate with a wider audience. So if you see on the right, it says a calmer, more relaxed version of you awaits. A key insight here is like on the left, we're talking about the technology. On the right, we're talking about the benefits that the consumer is able to extract from the device and what's actually going to drive them to purchase. And even on this screen, like on the hero section, we split tested several images, like with the model there with their eyes open, eyes closed, different models, and then which the actual headline itself was tested multiple times. And then even this particular headline is like a variant test of a control that we beat several times over. And we just started navigating towards this new messaging style, and also the whole process led to a 247% increase in conversion rate. And back to our earlier point, it's not just about finding one win. It's really a game of stacking, dozens and dozens of micro wins, and you will get some really big needle movers in there as well. But it's just the act of continually stacking and stacking wins. And in this particular scenario, like as soon as we added or changed the title to a more benefit-driven title, we saw the 79% surge in revenue per session. And then as we improved landing pages, the offer, the website navigation, the whole process ended up with a 247% increase. And even crazier than that is that we saw a 91% reduction in CAC. So like from that perspective, it's kind of insane because for anyone on the call, if you're able to reduce your CAC by 91%, it's like literally transformative to the business. And that's kind of the power of CRO when done correctly.
I just want to add one thing around like about the that headline test. So, when Tammy was saying don't stop at one win, like obviously that means like not just one win overall, but also even within an area. So like that headline was probably iteration 4. And so with the iteration, like the first A/B test that was run, I think it was an ABC test in this case, that was a win. So it's, and then obviously you replaced your winning headline, but then, and not just like, okay, headline's done, let's move to the image, let's move to the CTA, let's move to, below the fold, but even continuing on the headline. And, if variant C1, then what does that mean? What if that means, if there was some kind of learning from that, then now making 3 more variations based on that, and just keep iterating even in that same test from there, and then also other areas as well too.
Just one last thing I'll add to this is one of the things that we did is like once we figured out what messaging worked on the homepage and in the landing pages, we started trying to take that win and spread it across other areas of the company. Like if you discover that the messaging that works through one of your CRO tests, that really should be implemented both in the creatives that you create for Facebook, the back-end email sequences, like it shouldn't just be isolated to the website. It really should be, here's a key learning and how do we distribute this across all areas of the business. Like if you learn that, the copy that works as a calmer, more relaxed version of you, then perhaps like even if you're doing booths at a conference, that's what should be on the marketing materials there. So it's taking that learning and spreading it across the organization, not just in the context of the website.
Yeah, so to recap that case study in particular, we really believe that success is actually a series of compounded wins. So exactly what both Hafiz and Paul were sharing there is being able to take those learnings and stack them and don't stop at just one. So here's some fun tactical things that we'd love to share with you. So when you're looking at your landing page and your offer, you want to assess and see if it actually answers these 5 questions. So what are you selling? Why should that person care? What are the benefits? Why should they believe you? And if you're in a commoditized market, what about your product is better than the rest? And the reason for these 5 questions and why you want to address them right away is because you only have a few seconds to grab their attention. And when you do grab their attention, then you can make sure that your landing page speaks to all these things. And that's how you make sure that they stay and continue to scroll and explore and actually lead to a purchase. So those are the 5 questions that we recommend when you're looking at your landing page as a quick audit. What are you looking for? Now, as you can recall, we promised you 3 immediate things that you can do to get more profit, and we're about to share it with you.
Cool. So I'll jump in here. So launching a customer survey is like one of the most important things you can do, and a comprehensive one at that. So, just asking them how they like the product is the lowest version of a survey you can do. It really should be comprehensive, and you should be trying to extract as much information and insights as you can that can be utilized in the funnel. So make sure to craft a survey and send it out to your customers and ask them if they could wave a magic wand, what would the product do for them? And is there anything that almost stopped them from purchasing? Then take those insights and weave them back into your landing pages, into your ad creatives, and make sure that the conversion rate itself goes up significantly. The next thing would be to do a mobile audit, right? Just as MyProtein has that issue where the image is not loading on the mobile version of the website. This is super common. And one thing I want to also point out is oftentimes people don't visit their own websites very often. So like in the case of some stores or offers and products on Shopify, people add apps, they add chat widgets, things over time, but they never go back and visit their page on a mobile device. And then you'll find weird things have happened, like a chat widget is covering up the add to cart button, so it's not working correctly. And things like that can occur where there's weird bugs. And also, like part of the mobile experience is identifying, like, is all the information that they need to start making their purchase decision or considering the product rendering above the fold. And then we kind of shared earlier, we had great success with this confetti animation with adding that to when a user adds to cart. We definitely recommend you guys try that out, because in most cases that added gamification and experience results in people converting at a higher rate. And then the last thing is we added a bonus one here, which is like add a how-to section, which is a simple like step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, get the benefit of using the product kind of thing. This is going to be dependent on the product. Like if you sell clothing, probably don't need to tell people how to put on a t-shirt. But if you're selling a product that's like, in the examples that we gave, like an EEG wearable or a product that's a little bit more complex or requires some level of explanation, adding the how-to section can have a significant impact on checkout rates and conversion rates.
On 2B there, I just want to add one other point. When you visit your website on your own phone, view it in a private tab, so that way you're viewing it without any cookies as well too. Because sometimes if you had, like, let's say a survey that pops up or some sort of like modal box or chat widget or whatever, and you've closed it previous time if you visited it before, but a new visitor that visits your site for the first time from, let's say, top of funnel ad campaigns or an affiliate, they won't have that same experience. So by viewing it in a private tab, you kind of reset all the things that may have been saved by cookies, and you get that first time user experience.
So yeah, based on all the things that we covered, as you can see, CRO is such a powerful tool. And once you implement it, that's how you're going to be able to increase profitability. You're going to be able to unlock scale. And then once you have those metrics improved, then you're going to be able to also attract and retain top affiliates and not go through that churn and burn. And then ultimately, as Hafiz went over the model there, you can actually also improve the enterprise value as well. So we've been working with Everflow for over 3 years now. And as friends of the community, we would love to offer anybody that needs an audit of their funnel, please feel free to shoot me an email or schedule a time to chat with me. And Paul, if you can pop that in the chat, we'll be happy to look things over. And we really hope you enjoyed our session today and found the information we shared super valuable. And we'd love to have this time open for any questions.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, we do have a Q&A feature. You just need to click on the question mark and submit your questions. One of the questions that came in is, what are some of the common barriers that a brand faces when looking to do conversion rate optimization, and what are some strategies to get the C-suite interested?
Sorry, you're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. I can take that on. I think part of one of the slides that Hafiz chatted about earlier is that I think it's the framing of the conversation of CRO. A lot of it is like, I think it's misunderstood and it's thought of as an efficiency play. But, Hafiz had that wonderful explanation and model of how it actually impacts the bottom line. So I think it's once people understand that it's really about optimizing for more profits, they suddenly become far more interested in working on it. So I would suggest that if you're going to have a conversation with C-suite or anyone, is to not frame it as an efficiency, but like, here's a way we can make X amount more profit potentially with our existing traffic, because that piques their interest. And then how you get there is CRO, but ultimately it's about increasing profits for the entire business.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And is there a certain stage in a company that you see conversion rate optimization come into play more, or where do you see it kind of in sort of the life cycle of a company becoming very, optimal for a brand to invest in conversion rate optimization?
I think, to be honest, like it should be something that's worked into like the culture of the company, that it's something that you continually work on. Mind you, yes, it has more of an impact and it's more pronounced when you're at larger scale, but I do believe that it should be worked on early, because like it may not working on it may make it a lot harder and slower to scale. So, as an example, like if you don't do CRO at the beginning and you launch an offer and it does terribly, it might be a lot harder to get things to go, versus like if you had a continual CRO process, even at low scale, you might be able to hit product market fit quicker and be able to scale quicker because you're constantly iterating and improving. And yeah, it's just like there's definitely an impact whether you're small or big. So I wouldn't say there's a specific time you should consider it. It's more of a weaving it into the culture of the business that you're constantly iterating and optimizing.
What I will add though is like it's the how to do it at different stages does make a difference. Like if you have 10,000 visitors a month to your site, it's going to be hard to like get statistically significant tests on a high price point product with like an A/B testing tool, because you're not doing enough probably conversions to make that, like an A/B test in your headline might take a full month to get data back on. And so a couple of things around that is, one, at the earlier stages, if A/B testing tools and the pricing behind them and all that isn't really feasible, the surveys are still one way to do it, and just listening to the responses you get. And even at the earliest stages of the company, when there's only a handful of sales, maybe just like you can even call every customer that bought and talk to them and thank them for being an early customer and backing you, and then asking them those questions and having a conversation with them. And obviously that doesn't scale well, which is why you have to do things like email surveys and things like that as you grow. But essentially, like to Paul's point, it's like it needs to be ingrained in the culture of the company, and it's just the how you do it changes as you grow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you kind of referenced, some tools here today. You talked about using, like, say, some AI tools to help consolidate some of the data points. Are there any other tools that types of tools that you would recommend, brands look into that are looking to do CRO, or what are some of the technologies that are involved?
Yeah, so an A/B testing tool is probably is a key one there. We like Convert. Convert.com is a good choice for medium-sized or large-sized businesses. Also, but that's if you're using like that's gonna be like a general works in many circumstances. If you have like a custom card or data pipelines that are built through like a CDP like Segment, I'm a fan of a tool called StatSig as well too, because it generally is good at like integrating with those more enterprise platforms. Obviously comes at a higher price point, but it's got a lot more cool tools within that to make it easier. All of those are better than like the old way of doing it by like Google Optimize, which obviously is no longer an option.
That's great.
And then in terms of surveys, Google Forms is a nice free one. In terms of customers like surveys after checkout, still like Hotjar is a good one. Or whether it's for site intercept or post-purchase surveys or things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's really helpful, especially for brands and agencies and others that are looking to, improve their conversion rate optimization. One last question. Is there any different approaches that you kind of recommend? I know you work with a lot of e-commerce brands, but there's also a lot of lead gen or other different verticals and companies. Are there any different approaches that you would take for different verticals, or what do you kind of recommend for CRO for lead gen versus e-commerce versus some of the other verticals that are out there?
Yeah, I think so there's kind of like this approach to CRO, which is just like the checklist approach, which is just like do this, do this, do this, do this. We're generally not a fan of that because different businesses require different approaches, and it depends what stage you're in, right? For example, like, you know, if you're running at massive volumes, like certain things are going to be more important than others. So just a generic like practice list of doing this and that doesn't always drive the results. To answer your question, the CRO is a vehicle to get you the outcomes that you're looking for. So you really have to back it into like what are the KPIs and the goals of the business, and then how can you structure CRO tests that are going to deliver those outcomes. So if you're a lead generation company, like the CRO tests, depending on what stage you're at, like, you know, to give you an example, like if you are a CRO, like you're a lead gen company, but you're struggling with profitability, then setting your CRO tests around improving getting your media buying profitability up could be one thing. But say you're a very mature brand and you're like the media buying stuff is not struggling, and it's just you're getting so many applicants for your particular product that you can't manage to deal with them, then your CRO process might be more around how do I get my funnel to convert and drive higher quality leads so that we can, you know, better, you know, deal with them with our call agents. So it really depends on what the stage of the business is and what their goals are, but the CRO should be like tailored around what they're trying to accomplish, and then you know, attacking the funnel based on that kind of like North Star.
And I'll also add on to that is, you know, this is one of the first slides. The point was like optimizing for any conversion, you know. So like if you do a front end test that like jacks up your, you know, lead opt-in rate, that may or may not be a good thing on the back end of however it's being monetized, whether you're trying to monetize it or you're selling the lead and someone else is monetizing it. You know, the latter one obviously probably get a slower or longer feedback cycle that something isn't working well anymore, but so you may make more money in the short term, but in the long term, it may hurt you. And so that's where really, like, again, the technology you use for doing your any sort of conversion rate optimization, it's important to, you know, any change that's made, you kind of tag that lead with kind of what the kind of circumstances were. And so that way later on you can back out like, hey, maybe this new headline test was, you know, great for lead capture, but not great for overall conversion. And I basically started, even if it doesn't have less conversions, it could end up being more time spent on phones with bad quality leads, which is another cost as well. So, you know, you don't have less sales overall, but you have just more wasted cycles. And so that's also a net negative. So, you know, that's where a tool actually, like what I was saying earlier, StatSig can be very helpful because it has that kind of deeper tech integrations with like front end, back end that you can potentially use as well too.
That's great. Yeah, I think we're at time, but I've learned so much about conversion rate optimization, and I'm sure everyone that's listening in has gained a lot of knowledge too. You guys were very thorough, which was amazing. But yeah, just wanted to thank you, Tammy, Hafiz, and Paul for joining us today. If anyone wants to know anything about conversion rate optimization, I would recommend that you reach out to Conscious Partners. They're experts in the field. They're a longtime Everflow partner. And thanks everyone for joining today.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks everyone.